Good evening. So glad to be here on this great day that God has made. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 6. We're going to be looking at 3 verses in that chapter, verses 19 through 21. That's Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21. And I'll read those 3 verses and then we'll dive in. It says, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your heart is, there will your heart be also." For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. I kind of jumped ahead of myself just briefly there. If we look back at that verse 19, it says, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth." And what that's really talking about is talking about those material possessions that we try to take hold of, that we look at as being of importance, as we look at as being things that are going to help us get to our next step. It might be, the vehicles we drive. It might be the house we live in. It might be the clothes we wear, maybe the shoes we wear. I remember growing up, the Nike Air Jordans were the big thing. And it was, man, if a classmate of mine walked in with a brand new pair of those Nike Air Jordans, man, I mean, everyone was running up to him. Everyone was like, "Man, I've got to see those shoes, man. I want to touch them." And sometimes the kid would be like, "You can't touch my shoes." Sometimes, the kid would be like, "Oh, yeah, you can touch it." But for that classmate, or for those times when that would happen, man, that classmate was proud of those shoes, and to them those shoes were everything. To them those shoes, I mean, they were their world. They were what they put their complete and total focus on. But this is saying, hey, don't lay up yourselves treasures upon earth. Don't put all of your focus on the things of this earth. Don't let those shoes become your world. Don't let those shoes become what you begin to worship. Because it says that stuff's going to be destroyed. That stuff's going to, it's going to eventually go away. Those shoes, if that classmate, if he wore those shoes enough, eventually they were going to start deteriorating. They were going to start getting holes in them. They were going to start losing grip. They were going to lose what the purpose of those shoes were. They were going to be gone. And so all that time that individual had put into focusing on the shoes, hey, it's gone now. So where's that person going to put their focus now? They don't have the shoes to put their focus up on. But then in verse 20 it says, "But instead lay up your treasures in heaven." It says, "Where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal." So instead of putting our focus, instead of putting our trust, instead of worshiping the things of this world, instead of letting the things of this world become our treasure, become the thing that we hold on tight to, the thing instead that we need to put our focus on, the thing instead that we need to store up treasures in is heaven. That's where our eternity lies. That's where our eternal salvation is guaranteed. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Hey, allow the things of God to be where you put your focus on. Allow the things of God to be where you put your worship in. Allow the things of God to be where all of your energy goes towards. Allow people to see in you that that's where your treasures are. Allow people to see in you that instead of you worried about what your material possessions here are on earth, that instead, may they see that you're focused on God and what He'd have for us, and that you're focused on God and what He wants from us, which is worship towards Him. That's where our focus needs to be. That's where our direction needs to be. That's what needs to be the center of attention, because this verse says, hey, that stuff, if we put our focus on God, if we put our focus on the things of heaven, if we let, the things that aren't of this earth, then hey, that's not going to be destroyed. That's not going to be corrupt, or that's not going to go corrupt, And then that verse 21, it says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So if your treasure is on the material possessions, if your treasure is on the things of this earth, the material things, the things, hey, check out my new sneakers. Hey, check out this new jacket I just received, or whatever. If that's where you put your focus on, your center of attention draws immediately to that, and that's what you try to allow people to see, then hey, he's saying, hey, that's where your heart's going to be ultimately. That's if that's where you're trying to show off the material possessions you have, then you need to look deep down in your heart and say, hey, is that really what the case needs to be? But instead, if you're putting your focus on the things of God, if you're putting your worship towards Him, if you're focused on what He'd have for us to do, then people are going to know that, hey, that's where that person's heart is as well. So, as a challenge, make sure that your focus is on God. Make sure your desires are to do His will in your life, through your life. Make sure that your focus is on not something that's temporary like the things of this earth. Instead, make sure your focus is on the eternal, that which lasts forever, with our Heavenly Father in heaven.
Amen.